funding to support local priorities with a focus on greater social distancing in class.
Right now, if there was a risk, I would not recommend the schools are being opened.
Handing in an updated plan they say will lower COVID risks for kids. The education minister frees up $500 million of funding for school boards to access. After days of outrage from some parent and teacher groups, today the government updated its plan for students in this province. Farah Morelli joins us live from Huron Junior Public School. Farah, a late day press conference from the education minister. What stood out to you?
Well, Chris, a few things stood out to me. One was that the minister said that, he's heard the outrage, he's heard the criticism about the government's plan, and that it's now stepping it up. And what he announced today was this plan to allow school boards to essentially tap into their reserve funding to spend money on things like additional staff, additional resources, maybe even additional spaces, anything that they need to maintain physical distancing. Now, to take you back, it was 2 weeks ago today that the government announced its back-to-school plan for the province's students, 2 million students, I should say, in public school. And it was met with a lot of criticism from parents, from educators, from healthcare professionals. And a lot of the focus of that criticism was on physical distancing, particularly in elementary school classrooms where there could be as many as 20, 30 students. And so that was a big criticism that we heard from all of those people. Now, today the minister said that the government is not going to mandate smaller class sizes, but instead it's going to allow individual school boards to tap into these reserve funds to the tune of $500 million to spend as they see fit, with this focus on improving physical distancing. Take a listen.
We're enabling school boards to respond to the challenges on the ground. Some school boards in Ontario will want more spacing, some of them will want more staffing, some will want all of the above. What this does is provide an element of latitude to respond to the risk and to the reality on the ground based on the classroom size and based on their ability to utilize additional space within their schools and within their communities.
Now, the minister also announced today a few other measures to improve safety in the classrooms. One of them was allocating $50 million to immediately improve HVAC and ventilation in schools. We know that's also been a big concern, particularly from parents when it comes to a lot of the older schools where ventilation is a huge concern, especially in the middle of a pandemic.
So far, many people have been scrutinizing these plans right from the beginning. How are people reacting to this announcement today from Lecce?
A lot of reaction to this announcement tonight, Chris. I think the big question in a lot of people's minds is, do school boards even have enough in their reserve funds to spend on this? We've reached out to the school boards for comment on this. The minister did say that for boards that don't have enough money, there will be top-ups, but certainly this is a quick turnover with school starting in just a couple of weeks. I should say we did get swift reaction tonight from the 4 teachers' unions. They actually put out a statement even before the minister started talking today, condemning this plan, essentially saying that they believe that even with these new additions, they do not meet Ontario's occupational health and safety standards. They want to sit down with the minister and hammer out another plan. They don't believe it is yet safe to return to school. But of course, some of the loudest critics have been parents, and particularly these concerns about physical distancing. I had a chance to speak to a mother from the Ontario Parent Action Network about what she thought about today's announcement. Take a listen.
I want assurances that my kids are going to be in classrooms that are small enough to be safe. I didn't hear that. I heard him passing off more work to the boards. Our boards have already said the money that they need to keep our kids safe in September. That wasn't what we heard today.
Now, Chris, I should add, at today's announcement by Minister Lecce was the province's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. David Williams. And what he said was that he would not allow schools to reopen if he didn't believe this plan was safe. So he essentially endorsed this plan from his perspective, and that's important to mention. Of course, there's still a lot of questions from parents and others. Minister Lecce is holding a virtual town hall tonight where he'll be taking some of those questions. And Chris, you can bet there's going to be a lot of them.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Farah. 2 city day camps have been closed after a child from one of those camps tested positive for COVID-19. The city says the camper was sent home with symptoms last week, but other kids who had contact with that camper were allowed to return to both locations. Greg Ross joins us live from City Hall now. And Greg, the closures didn't happen until after the test results came back.
That's right, Chris. So you can see why parents who have kids who are going to those camps would be concerned about this. The two camps that have been closed were located at the Barbara Frum Community Center and the Glen Long Community Center. Not only were they closed today, but the city also sent in staff to disinfect both locations. Now, we went to some of the other Camp TO locations around the city to talk to parents there to find out how they feel about this, and the reaction was somewhat mixed.
Yeah, it doesn't seem in line with the level of precaution. Just symptoms, we probably say play it safe and pull the kids out. And we're lucky, my wife and I are able to work from home and it's flexible.
I feel pretty safe bringing my kid here. Like, if I feel like he has any symptom, of course, I'll take him to a test and I'll stop bringing him right away. I think every parent probably has the same kind of behavior. I don't believe anybody will be responsible.
Now that we know it was positive, it's easy to say they should have sent them all home. I guess anyone who they knew had contact with someone with the symptoms probably should have stayed home. I guess that's my...
The mayor was also asked about this today, and he defended the way the city has handled it. He didn't go into great detail about why those kids who were exposed were actually allowed to go back to two different camps, but he did point out that so far this is an isolated incident, that so far no other campers and no other staff have reported any symptoms.
Well, I'm not trying to minimize the importance of that, and we've taken steps immediately upon that case coming to light to disinfect the camps, to take precautions with regard to some of the other kids that might have been exposed and things like that people would expect. But I would point out, just to put it in proportion, that there are about 4,000 kids that have been in these Camp TO programs, and this is the first case of its kind.
The mayor also pointing out that the city is still learning about this virus. They're still learning how to keep people safe while they're gathering in larger groups. I also reached out to city staff because we wanted to ask the question that will this change anything moving forward? Will it change protocols on how they handle situations like this? For example, if there is a child who is showing symptoms, will they send multiple children home and keep them home until they can get a test result? At this point, we haven't been able to get anything back from city staff, Chris.
All right, thanks for this, Greg. Now let's get to Ontario's COVID-19 case count today. And again, it was lower than 100 cases, but the numbers are missing some key information. 78 new cases were reported in the province, but this does not include data from Toronto Public Health, a region that usually accounts for a large portion of the daily case count. There are currently 891 active cases province-wide, most of them confined to southern Ontario. Nearly 30,000 tests were processed yesterday. Meanwhile, the University Health Network is marking a big milestone today. It has no COVID-19 patients in any of its hospitals as of this morning. As Lisa Shing reports, its staff say they've learned a lot and are prepared now for a possible second wave.
For the first time since the beginning of the pandemic, University Health Network has no COVID cases in its hospitals as of 8:30 this morning.
We really had the sickest of the sick patients. So it's even more encouraging to me to see that today we have none of those patients.
Some hospitals under UHN have been some of the hardest hit. In May, Toronto Western had 4 outbreaks where 19 patients and dozens of staff had the virus. Dr. Tariq Abdel Halim worked through it.
It was sort of one of the most difficult moments that I've been through as a healthcare worker. It was extremely stressful, transferring patients who were developing COVID in the hospital to the COVID teams and talking to their families, and the families weren't even able to come and visit their loved ones. And so it was absolutely stressful, and it was a real test, I think, of our hospital and the healthcare workers.
The news is also a big deal since UHN has 10 hospitals and centers in its network.
UHN, with the size it is, it's a remarkable milestone to get that number down.
Frontline staff say they've come a long way.
We weren't certain if Toronto was going to be like Madrid or some of the places that we were seeing in Europe and New York City. So the uncertainty early on was quite stressful for all of the healthcare workers.
But since then, he's seen fewer and fewer COVID patients, and with that, a bit of time to breathe and prepare.
And then, watching things get better, closing COVID teams down, I haven't seen someone with COVID in 6 weeks. It's been quite a change that, we've watched happen before our eyes.
Despite the good news, UHN says it's still prepared for a possible second wave in the fall. The province says it also has a plan but isn't making it public just yet. Lisa Shang, CBC News, Toronto.
For the second time this week, a child has died after being struck by a vehicle. A 19-month-old boy was hit by a delivery van in a Mississauga parking lot late yesterday afternoon.
Prior to the arrival of emergency services, the child was transported to an area hospital, which is just down the street, by the child's parent as well as the driver of the vehicle that struck the child. How the collision itself occurred is still part of our investigation. That's something our major collision investigators will be looking into to determine exactly the sequence of events that led to this child being struck.
The toddler died in the hospital. No charges have been laid at this time. The tragic case comes a day after a 3-year-old boy was killed in a collision in Etobicoke. He was struck by an SUV while crossing the street with his family. His older sister was also seriously injured. And in Brampton, a motorcyclist has died after a collision with a transport truck overnight. It happened in an industrial area of the city at about 3:30 this morning. The transport truck appears to have been pulling out of a yard when the collision occurred. The motorcyclist was thrown from his vehicle and he was pronounced dead in the hospital. Anyone who witnessed the crash is asked to call Peel Police.
Fact of the matter is, the alleged eyewitness was simply not at the scene on the morning of the accident. And we have an abundance of evidence to disprove that.
How a fender bender led to allegations of a fake eyewitness and negligent police investigation. That story is coming up after a quick look at your weather. And what a beautiful look at that weather it's going to be, right, Colette?
Yeah, that's right, Chris. When you have day after day of conditions like this.
Let's order another one tomorrow.
Okay, and I'm going to fill that order for you.
All right.
We can get complacent because you just come to expect it. It's like, all right, I know what it's going to be, and I just make my plans, and okay, we are going to give it to you one more day, though, but you got to start to pay attention as we get into the weekend. Saturday, the changes, they're going to be kind of slight. The temperature comes down just a little bit. We'll get a few more clouds coming in, but into Sunday, we are going to have a system coming in from the west, one kind of sneaking up from the south. So later in the day, it looks like we'll see some scattered thunderstorms starting to develop into the afternoon and evening. So I do want you to be kind of paying attention to that as you're making your plans. These are the current conditions, though. Those temperatures there in the upper 20s still. Humidex values is still pretty comfortable. Some low 30s for those values. Clear skies, not just as we look at the smaller perspective, even as we broaden it, and that's because high pressure is still in place here. Things will be changing, and I'm going to walk you through how that's going to happen into your weekend. That's coming up, but for this evening, the sun sets at 8:25. The temperature by then coming down to about 26 degrees, and then overnight we'll get into clear conditions, 19. Tomorrow afternoon, we do it again, 29, feeling like 34. So the humidity, Chris, just creeping up a little bit. That's about the only change.
All right, well, that's good, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more about this weekend forecast.
That's coming up then.
Thanks, Colette.
You got it.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
What started as an ordinary fender bender in the summer of 2017 turned into a lawsuit, allegations of a fake eyewitness, and accusations that police bungled the investigation. Lauren Pelly now with this exclusive story.
This was the scene of a run-of-the-mill fender bender in Bradford. It happened 3 years ago, and things have taken a strange turn since.
Right along there, was that?
This is Keening Chen and his paralegal. Chen says on that day in 2017, he was rear-ended here by a transport truck. Speaking in Mandarin through a translator, he says the damage was going to cost around $4,000. Chen also claims the truck driver falsely blamed Chen for the crash, accusing him of backing into his truck. Chen is now suing multiple parties, including that other driver, and the South Simcoe Police Services Board, who his legal team says bungled the investigation.
I've discussed this with quite a few of my colleagues, and it's a head-scratcher, to say the least.
The $25,000 lawsuit alleges that while the truck driver initially offered to pay the full cost of repairs to Chen's vehicle, he later falsely reported to police that Chen was at fault. The statement of claim also alleges the truck driver fabricated an alleged eyewitness and concealed a personal relationship he has with that person to police. Friends shouldn't count as a witness, says Chen, who maintains he didn't see anyone that day at the scene.
The fact of the matter is, the alleged eyewitness was simply not at the scene on the morning of the accident. And we have an abundance of evidence to disprove that.
South Simcoe Police, the truck driver, and the alleged witness have all filed statements of defense in the case. They deny all of Chen's allegations. Meanwhile, Chen claims that seemingly routine crash has changed his life. And he says he no longer trusts the legal system. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
And remember, if you have a story you'd like us to look into, send us an email at torontotips@cbc.ca. When we come back, the latest on the political volatility in Lebanon. More than a week after that massive explosion that killed 171 people and injured thousands, Lebanon's parliament met for the first time today and granted the military sweeping powers. Plus, how one Lebanese Canadian woman went from a refugee to the CEO of a major company.
I was grateful for the mentors that took chances on me, and I surrounded myself with people that I know that I can learn from, because if you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. But if you're determined, you're unstoppable.
Lebanon's parliament met today for the first time since that massive explosion in Beirut 9 days ago. It approved a state of emergency, granting the military sweeping powers. That move has further escalated anger at Lebanon's ruling elite, already facing protests and accusations of corruption and mismanagement. Rebecca Collard now with the latest from Beirut.
The cleanup continues in Beirut while Lebanese wait for answers. More than a week after the explosion, it's still not clear how thousands of tons of highly explosive ammonium nitrate was allowed to be left in the city's civilian port next to a densely populated neighborhood. But what is now clear is that many of Lebanon's leaders knew about it. Senior U.S. diplomat David Hale arrived in Beirut today to survey the damage in one of the worst affected neighborhoods. He promised the U.S. would help in the search for the truth.
The United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, will soon join Lebanese and international investigators at the invitation of the Lebanese in order to help answer questions that I know everyone has about the circumstances that led up to this explosion, and to work with Lebanese in this regard. And this is just one of the many ways that we're extending our hand to Lebanese people at this dire time.
Many in Lebanon have been calling for an international investigation, but it's not clear if U.S. involvement will be welcomed by all here. Hale also pledged more help, but said it will come with conditions and will require government reform. That echoes calls from other foreign states who seem unwilling to put aid or money in the hands of Lebanese officials, who have been accused of endemic corruption. That was also echoed by protesters this week, who took to the streets demanding the fall of the government. They say it's the same sort of corruption, negligence, and mismanagement that they have suffered for decades that led to the explosion that has devastated their capital. The Prime Minister and cabinet stepped down, but many here say that is not enough. They want new elections under a new electoral law and significant political change. Rebecca Collard, CBC News, Beirut.
I escaped Lebanon 31 years ago. The corruption in the government that needs to be absolutely taken out and start from the ground up. And you need people that care about people, not people in government that care about their own motive.
That's Rola Dagger. She is one of several Lebanese Canadians mobilizing support for their homeland. She is now the president of Cisco Canada, but her life started in chaos. Dwight Drummond spoke to her about how she went from being a Lebanese refugee to the head of $1 billion corporation.
I actually have to pinch myself now, and sometimes I feel, is it real? Is it surreal that I am where I am today? So I was born and raised in a small town called Dahr al-Mghara in Arabic. In translation in English is Back of the Cave.
Really?
Yes, that's the name of the town, Back of the Cave. And it's all the Dagger family, so they all married each other. There's about probably, I would say maximum about 100 homes. And my father was an amazing man, but he didn't like the typical things. So he decided to go outside of the town and found my mother, and she was 15 years old. Had a family of 6 girls, 6 daughters. For a Lebanese traditional man, he was looked at, poor man, haram. The word that they used is haram, means poor man. That he only has 6 daughters. They're going to amount to nothing. The man doesn't have a boy to carry the name of the family. And I remember my father used to tell us a story. In fact, when my youngest sister Diana was born, my grandmother came and said, Michael, I read in the coffee cup, if you, after 6 girls, you will have a boy. He said, Mom, I love you. Get the hell out of my house. I am done. He was so tough on all of us, and he's still so tough on all of us. And every time you fall down, he'll be, get up. Let's go. You can do it. And he taught us all that there's nothing a boy can do that you cannot do. And he picked me to be his little boy. In fact, for many years, people didn't think that maybe Michael had a boy because he used to cut my hair so short.
You were born into the war, no? Because of the timing.
Yeah, so I was born in 1970. During the war, our town got attacked multiple times. We escaped, and my father's role at the time is continue to move us from town to town to find us a safe place to live.
You were spending your formative years in a war zone, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. I could tell you most of my life was in a bomb shelter. And I've seen bomb shelters, then I've seen parked. All my sisters, it's amazing when after it bombs for so many hours, we actually get out for fresh air for 5 minutes, but all you see is what you see today on TV in Lebanon, how it was all demolished. I remember we used to huddle because you used to hear the whistle of the bomb and you know that it's coming, and then the explosion happens, because I can still remember that. And all I could remember is my sisters screaming and yelling, and my father and my mother is just kind of holding all of us together.
Let's get into your career, because I find this also fascinating. You started as a retail sales clerk.
Yeah.
Started selling stuff. Yeah. And then what was the progression? Because you know, your formal education wasn't in Canada, and most of the people in your position, they have MBAs and higher. So how did you pull this off, not only as an immigrant, but also as a woman?
Determination. The one word I would tell you is determination. And that is what is in me. My father, my family, and all my sisters, that we were brought up to say, no matter how tough it gets, you gotta go. When I got to the role at Cisco, it was like a dream, because I tried multiple times. They didn't hire me as an account manager, but they saved me for the president role, which is amazing.
So you tried to get in before on lower levels, and then they came and sought you out.
After for the president role. And it's amazing when our CEO, Chuck Robbins, first met me and heard that I don't have a formal degree. He said, Rola has a master and a doctorate in life.
There you go.
And to me, it's the book smart versus the street smart, and that's how I learned it. I was grateful for the mentors that took chances on me, and I surrounded myself with people that I know that I can learn from, because if you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. But if you're determined, you're unstoppable. And today, even though in my role, I will always tell you I don't know it all, because learning has been the fuel of my success, because that's the only way we as leaders will continue to grow, by learning from the millennials, by learning from people that think different. I don't hire people that do things like me and they come from the same background. I want to hire people that are completely different, that they're going to come and challenge me for what I do and how I do it. The only thing that I love to do is hire people that are hungry like me and have strong values, and they just want to get things done.
Were you surprised when they reached out to you and said, oh, is this Rola Dagher? Yeah, we want to offer you this job?
100%. I thought they actually had the wrong number. And I was an account manager at Dell, then I moved to a director, to a VP, and they said, who's this Lebanese fiery, woman that is making so much waves in Canada? And when Cisco called, I was like, I think they have the wrong number. And I remember the recruiter said, no, I don't. We've been following your success, and we want to talk to you for a reason. And it was 17 interviews later, Dwight, when I got the role. It was a Saturday.
17 interviews.
Yes,
wow.
17 interviews. When I got the call, it was a Saturday. I was at Sobeys buying parsley so my mom could make me tabbouleh. And the recruiter calls. Paul said, "Hey, it's Paul Rola. I'm sorry I'm calling you on a Saturday, but I can't wait. You got the job." I actually sat on the floor of the parking lot, and I cried like a little kid. Even now, it is surreal to me how much we have and I have accomplished, but it's all because of the people that took a chance on me.
What is your advice to women, and not only racialized women, because it seems to be a gender problem, especially in tech, that just keep hitting their heads against this glass ceiling as they're trying to get to, especially in your sector. What's your advice to them?
The one advice that I would give every woman and man as well, be yourself, because everyone else is taken out there. Because being me has served me to be where I am today. Being me has allowed other people to feel comfortable being themselves around me, because you're gonna hit so much in your life, but failing is okay. You could learn from. But the one thing that I would tell all these women and men out there, that giving up should never, ever, ever be an option.
Wow, what an incredible story, and so inspiring at that. You can watch more of that interview between Dwight and Rolla Dagger on our website, and you'll hear more about her push to help those who were affected after that deadly explosion last week. You can find it all on cbc.ca/Toronto. When we come back, how one First Nation is trying to keep their classrooms safe.
These are the sugar cubes. We've been playing around with what we'll name them so that the students will like to sit at them. We're not going to call them your cage.
How students there are being taught not to fear COVID-19, but to respect it. That's next.
I'll be expanding the ability of boards for this year only in a one-time request to access reserve funding, which is taxpayer dollars that are unspent, which can immediately be used for these priorities with a focus on greater social distancing.
The big story of the day, the education minister says his government is allowing for $900 million of funding to make sure kids go back to school safely. $500 million of that is from the school board's reserve funding. The minister also announced $50 million for ventilation and other HVAC upgrades to improve air quality in classrooms. And an extra $18 million will go towards improving online learning. The Ford government has faced growing pressure from parents and teachers since announcing its plan. In Saskatchewan, a First Nation is taking its COVID-19 prevention measures to a whole new level. It's in preparation for school to return next month, but it's not just for student safety, it's for the rest of the community as well. Bonnie Allen has the details from Pasqua First Nation.
Only authorized visitors are allowed into Pasqua First Nation these days.
Hi, good morning.
Hi there, how are you? The tight-knit community of 800 people hasn't had a single case of COVID-19. Still, at the local school, Chief Matthew Pegan says 200 students will face strict measures from day one.
I don't want to do steps. If there's a case, this is what we'll do. If there's 2 cases, this is what we'll do. Well, why can't we prevent that right away in the immediate and go to the extreme?
The class sizes will be cut in half, with 15 students at most in a room. They will alternate days, learning virtually from home every other day, and each desk has a plexiglass barrier.
So these are the sugar cubes. We've been playing around with what we'll name them so that the students will like to sit at them. We're not going to call them your cage.
Pasqua First Nation owns a manufacturing company that's been able to build the plexiglass barriers and other equipment.
They're telling us what they need to go back to school. We're rapidly prototyping it here at our facility at ProMetal.
It's made portable hand washing stations and touchless sanitation stands for each classroom.
And then you wipe your hands.
Students will wear disposable masks on the bus, but the moment they enter the school, they will be given a clean cloth mask that will be color-coded by grade to help the teachers keep the groups separate.
I'm excited for sure, but of course still a little nervous.
Principal Christina Johns knows they can't control everything.
Especially the little ones, kindergarten, grade 1, where they still love to hug their teacher. How do you get away from that, and still make them feel loved and safe?
The director of education says an elder taught her an important lesson that she's applying here.
We're not to fear COVID-19. We are to respect it.
And that's what they will teach the children. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Pasqua First Nation.
Back here in Ontario, several school boards are set to make a big decision that'll shape their path forward. Over the last 6 months, there have been 14 vacant Director of Education positions in Ontario's public school system and 5 in the Catholic boards. While several have already been filled, others are still looking, including multiple school boards right here in the GTA. Earlier, I spoke with education professor Carl James, and I started by asking him why the Director of Education role is so critical.
It's very, very critical. Not only is it providing leadership in the area of curriculum, but it also provides leadership in the area of who teaches and who gets to be leaders, beyond the director, who gets to be leaders of these teachers.
Have you ever seen anything close to this, where there's been this kind of a search for so many directors of education all at once?
No, I've never seen. But it could have been brought about by COVID.
Right.
It could have been brought about by having to do all these online teaching and having to manage the situation right now. You're dealing with anti-black racism, etc. You're also dealing with COVID and what that means. You deal with parents who are saying, "I don't want my children in school." Others who say, "I want my children." So a number of things are coming together. So we're not quite sure how, if you're near retirement and you're having to deal with all this, you might say, "Oh well, this seems at the opportune time, and therefore I'm quitting." We never can tell, but I think it's a good time to think about how we are going to be responsive.
Because it allows for that ability to have fresh blood come in and inject something else into the school system?
Absolutely, and I think, and I think probably we've not really done for some time, we haven't done a real critical review of what we've been doing all these many years. I think it's a good time for us to think of how to fill these vacancies insofar as we have all these discussions today about systemic racism, addressing the issues of Indigenous people, and also changing the curriculum to respond to the needs, issues, and interests of all the students that we're working with, knowing the diversity of these students.
So given that we are in this conversation right now about ending particularly anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism, what qualifications do you think need to be sought after when they're looking to fill these roles?
First of all, I think one of the person has to admit that race is a reality in people's lives, and do not assume you just see person. We can't be blind to color. We have to see that. You also have to see what are some of the gaps in the education process, what's the gaps in the curriculum, what are the gaps in the materials that students have been using over the years, and therefore you would have had, as a leader at this time, thought through these things and ready to respond and address them.
So the provincial government has said that they are going to be taking away this requirement to have, the director of education be a teacher. What impact do you think that's going to have?
I'm not very sure. However, some might say that the person who comes and is open to working with the existing situation and change accordingly, they might bring particular kinds of a new look, a new thinking, a new way of understanding. But again, it so much depends on who that person is and the work that that person has done in order to respond to the education of students today.
Okay, Carl, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.
And Carl James is a professor of education at York University. Meanwhile, Premier Doug Ford is in Windsor today announcing a $30 million investment for infrastructure projects.
$30 million is going to go a long way. But it's not just about improving our roads or making them safer. These projects will create good jobs, ensure businesses can get their goods to market, and get people to work on time and home sooner, so they can spend some quality time with their families.
So the money will go towards the Connecting Links program. It helps municipalities build and replace roads and bridges across Ontario that connect to provincial highways. While in Windsor, the Premier also visited a church. Ford met with members of the Lebanese community to show his support as they deal with the aftermath of the tragedy in Beirut. Let's get Colette back in the mix now. And Colette, you teased ahead to the weekend, so you want to break that down for us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, Chris, because it's really some changes that we're seeing now in terms of how I think these next couple of systems are going to come together and have an impact on us. Could actually have some active severe weather as we go into the second half of the weekend. So I'm going to illustrate that for you. Right now, I'll illustrate the current temperatures. 28 degrees. We did have a high today of 30 degrees, so still running above seasonal. It's 29 right now in Oshawa and St. Catharines and Peterborough as well. We do have some humidity, but it's still pretty comfortable because our dew points aren't too high. So basically feeling like we're at about 32 there. That's your humidex value. That ridge of high pressure then in place, that protects us. It kind of keeps everything at bay in terms of the moisture and the active weather for now. And it holds on for us for another couple of days. So Friday still looks good, looks pretty good into Saturday, a few transitions there. And this is what I mean. Here's Saturday, and this is a snapshot at 5 p.m., okay? We're seeing a little bit of precipitation here, sort of around the Golden Horseshoe there, around St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, but for the GTA, still looking pretty good. We'll actually get a little bit more cloud cover, and the temperature just a few degrees cooler than for our daytime highs on Saturday. Into Sunday, cold front to the west of us, system to the south of us, both kind of coming in as that ridge of high pressure slides off and allows them to move in. So what really is going to be happening is that later, so Sunday probably starts off with some sunshine. I know this kind of changed dramatically. It's because I'm getting into a long-term winter model here, so it looks a little different. But basically, as that cold front comes in into the afternoon and evening hours, that's when I anticipate that we'll get into some, not just showers, but some thunderstorm activity into the afternoon. Some of those could be on the severe level. And so that's what I want you to be paying attention then, is for the second half of the day towards the end of the weekend. Tonight, you don't need to worry about it. 8:25, the sun sets. 19 for your lows. Tomorrow, 29. Humidex around 34. A little cooler Saturday. Sunday's your target there to pay attention. And then we'll see things Monday afternoon. Could have a few of those thunderstorms lingering, but not likely severe.
All right. Well, at least the next couple days look great.
We still get to hang in there for a couple of nice ones, Chris.
All right. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
To York Region now, where police arrested a suspect this afternoon in Schaumburg in connection with a hate crime investigation. The arrest was made after Indigenous Lives Matter signs were stolen and burned.
We are taking it very seriously. This investigation is being led by our 1 district property crime unit, but it is being overseen by our hate crime unit.
The incident happened a few days after a resident had attempted to post a threatening message in a local Facebook group expressing displeasure with the movement and saying they would burn the signs. Some residents have also put up signs in support of Black Lives Matter, though they were not burned. Alicia Turner is a Schaumburg resident who created and distributed the signs.
This attack makes it very clear that we need to do more. And I'm really proud to say that people across town have been very positive, saying we won't back down. Give us more signs. Let's put them back up.
Details of the charges and the name of the suspect have yet to be released. When we come back, the story and the artist behind Toronto's newest memorial honoring an American abolitionist.
Slavery represented being uneducated, being restricted, being limited. And then over here, he's clutching his freedom papers and then the books that he likes to read. And so that represents the unlimited possibilities of freedom and his own possibilities and opportunities that he's creating for himself.
A little bit of history was highlighted today in Etobicoke as the city unveiled the winning design for a memorial commemorating Joshua Glover. Glover helped propel the abolitionist movement after escaping slavery in the United States using the Underground Railroad and settling in Etobicoke in 1854. We spoke to Quentin Versetti, the brains behind the design, about his sculpture and his personal connection to the story.
Even though Joshua Glover, a part of his story was that he was an enslaved African person, I didn't want that to be the main focus of the monument and the art piece. What I wanted to focus on was that his life is all about changes, it's all about transition. And so I wanted to go from showing a metaphor for his hardship that he was stuck at a certain point and chained to him transitioning and then going into him finally getting to a point where he can actualize that change. These two extremes, slavery represented being uneducated, being restricted, being limited, and then over here he's clutching his freedom papers and then the books that he likes to read. And so that represents the unlimited possibilities of freedom and his own possibilities and opportunities that he's creating for himself. Joshua Glover had a lot of achievements. Not just him running away from being enslaved, but also just him helping to create an integrated society. So he worked here at the Montgomery Inn for many years, which is a huge achievement. And he also moved up in the ranks and became a management position. So this is a big feat as well. As a youth, I was making a lot of poor decisions and hanging around a lot of people who were making negative impact on my life. I did end up sitting in jail cells many times. And so I know what it feels like to be limited to a circumstance and to be restricted and to be also told that you're stupid or that you're not intelligent by many of my teachers. But then my mother always emphasized on educating yourself, and that allowed me to look outside of my circumstance. And so one of those big connections with me and Joshua Glover is recognizing that I am not limited and I'm not defined by my circumstances. And through education, I can create new circumstances for myself and new opportunities. That's essentially what this work is about. It's helping other people to learn about themselves and to learn about the world around them. And this story is not just for people in Etobicoke, it's not just a story about slavery, it's a story about a human being.
When we return, keep on rocking in the COVID world.
Ecstatic. I didn't think I'd see any shows at all in 2020, so I'm really excited that I get to see my favorite band.
Concerts are usually synonymous with summer, but this year, COVID-19 threw a wrench in most public gatherings. One Toronto band, though, has found a way around that. July Talk is throwing 2 big drive-in concerts. They'll hit the stage in just a few hours, but we've got a preview for you. Our Natalie Nanowski went to check out the first one last night.
It's the full festival vibe, but from the comfort of your car, and most don't mind.
We came really early. We were here about 4:30 so that we could be still kind of front.
Ecstatic. I didn't think I'd see any shows at all in 2020, so I'm really excited that I get to see my favorite band.
Hi, I'm Leia.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here on behalf of July Talk to announce that our 2 drive-in shows will take place right here at the Stardust Drive-In Theater outside.
When COVID-19 hit, July Talk was just about to announce their 2020 concerts. Instead of canceling them, they came up with something different.
We were really excited.
Yeah, I believe we were like dancing immediately, like, what a great idea.
And our music videos and just cinema in general are things that we tend to really care about and are kind of like a big facet of the identity of the band, so it kind of just felt like a perfect match.
One of the best parts of this experience was that we actually met an archivist who's been cataloging old drive-in commercials from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They'll be integrated into the show.
A lot went in to get this concert going. There's a stage, 3 screens, and about 600 cars filled with fans. One of the few drive-in concerts in Canada.
So we've got a lot of balls in the air. We've got 8 cameras, we've got a drone camera.
Safety is a huge priority, and that means keeping everyone physically distant. So to encourage everyone to stay in their cars, the only way you can hear the concert is from inside your car by tuning in to a certain radio station. And if you do go outside to buy food or go to the bathroom, you have to make sure that you put on a mask. There's no booze for sale, and security is present to enforce the rules, but the onus is really on fans to stay in their social bubble. And it looks like most people enjoyed the music from the safety of their cars. The second sold-out show is tonight. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Sharon, Ontario.
And some nice weather again tonight for that outdoor concert, right, Colette?
Yeah, absolutely nice weather. We've got the sun setting at 8:25 and temperature then about, say it'll be around 25 degrees or so, 26. And then overnight, we're going to a low of 19 with clear conditions. Tomorrow, here we go again. 29, so a little bit above seasonal, about 4 degrees above seasonal. Mostly sunny skies. There'll be a little bit of humidity, so the humidex tomorrow is going to be right around 33 to 34. Saturday, a little increase in clouds, slightly cooler, only slightly. But it's Sunday, later in the day, afternoon, evening. We have the risk of some thunderstorm development moving through and the possibility we could have some severe weather. So that'll be something we'll be watching, Chris.
When it's as nice as it was today, I don't mind a repeat. And that is our show for you tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 6 o'clock.